The views or opinions expressed in the following broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of staff or management of DSE-TV. Viewer discretion is advised.
It's my privilege tonight to introduce our speaker. We're privileged to have with us Mrs. Barbara Listing, President of Right of Life, Michigan. And she has served as president since January 1981. Mrs. Listing is responsible for the management of all the entities under RLM, which include the Education Fund, Legal Defense Fund, the Endowment Fund, and the Political Action Committee. Mrs. Listing has co-managed 2 successful statewide legislative initiative drives and 2 successful statewide referenda votes that have involved ending Michigan taxes for Medicaid abortions and the defeat of the legalization of assisted suicide. Hallelujah. She has aided in the efforts that have made Right to Life of Michigan a pioneer in the pro-life movement's use of mass media to reach the public. Mrs. Listing received an honorary Doctor of Law degree from Michigan's Sacred Heart Major Seminary. And in 2001, she was the recipient of an honorary Doctor of Humanities degree from the Franciscan University of Steubenville, in Steubenville, Ohio, for her leadership in the pro-life movement. Mrs. Listing graduated summa cum laude from Central Michigan University with a Bachelor of Science degree in secondary education. She was a high school history teacher and a guidance counselor before her full-time involvement in the pro-life movement. She represents Michigan as a board member of the National Right to Life Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please give her a warm West Michigan welcome.
Well, when I hear that introduction, I'm reminded of how long I've been in this category called senior citizen. And I love it. I'm enjoying myself. You know, I get helped up to the podium, and we get senior coffee at McDonald's. And there are a lot of perks that go with this age. But also, there are some aches and pains. I've been told that it's hard to hear in the back. Right? Dee, how's it sound? Okay, I think they're closing the door now since you've told them. Well, looking at the audience, I can see I have some companions on this journey with me, this senior citizen journey. And for those of you that are smiling in the front because you're only in your 30s, you too will come along with me and you'll enjoy it too. Well, I hope that you will enjoy this story I have to share with you that those of us that are seniors can certainly understand. There was this elderly gentleman who had a severe hearing problem. He just couldn't hear his family's questions, and so he finally went to his doctor, and they fitted him with a set of hearing aids. And so a month later, he went back to his doctor for a checkup, and the doctor said, "Your hearing is now perfect. I bet you're so happy you can join in those conversations with the rest of your family." And the gentleman kind of shook his head and said, "Oh, I haven't told my family yet. I've been sitting around just listening to them, and I've changed my will 3 times." Well, I think we've all had those moments when we would prefer not being part of the conversation, not hearing certain questions. But despite our age, there are some things that we certainly don't want to avoid. We all have those memories that we can count on. There are certain events that are really kind of stamped into our memories. And I'm going to ask you a couple things about your memories, and if you remember like I do. How many in the audience, if I were to ask you Do you remember where you were on Friday, November 22nd, 1963, when President Kennedy was assassinated? Okay, as you look around the room, a lot of hands. Do you realize that's nearly 50 years ago? 50 years ago. Well, I was in my first year of teaching. I was at the blackboard, we had blackboards then, and that it was a American history class. So that memory is really stamped into my head. But some of you are much too young to remember that day. So another memory, how many of you remember where you were when you heard 9/11, when you heard about the towers? Well, if you look around the room now, you can see almost every hand is raised. And I too remember that day, and I'm so thankful about what happened. I was on my way to Washington, D.C. that day. I ended up in the airport in Detroit, and fortunately, my earlier flight would have had me in D.C., and I would have been there stranded. So that certainly is a memory for me. One last event. How many of you remember where you were nearly 39 years ago when the Supreme Court made the announcement that abortion was illegal? January 22nd. I see, raise your hands. If you look around, you'll see maybe 5 or 6 people. Isn't it amazing? We don't remember where we were that day. I don't remember either. And I think it's because none of us thought that abortion would touch us. We just didn't think about it. It was not going to be part of our lives. And I think I could argue that out of those other 2 events that I mentioned, the assassination and the Twin Towers, the attack, that probably abortion touches us more than anything else. It has invaded our lives, whether we know someone in our family who's had an abortion or whatever. Even if we're strongly pro-life, abortion touches us in such a variety of ways. That legal decision has really become almost like an octopus, the tentacles of that legal decision invading portions of our lives. And so tonight I'm just going to mention a few ways that abortion has intruded into our lives. And probably the one that we all recognize is through our taxes. That despite the fact that here in Michigan, fortunately, we no longer pay for Medicaid abortions, still at the federal level, it's an annual fight to prevent federal tax dollars from paying for abortions. And then we have the whole Obamacare and the fight that we will have, and our legislators back at the table will have, to ensure that Michigan opts out of any abortion coverage in any federal or state health plan. So abortion touches us through our taxes. Also, abortion hides in our support of other organizations and some really good causes. As Pat mentioned earlier in her comments, that we all see the pink ribbons and we all want breast cancer to be cured, a cure found for it, but yet Susan G. Komen has done such a magnificent job of promoting themselves. But on the other hand, what they hide is the fact that they do donate to Planned Parenthood. And those of you in this room know that Planned Parenthood is the largest abortion provider and promoter in the whole United States. And it's not just the Susan G. Komen Foundation, but also groups like the United Way. And probably many in this room, if you work for an organization or a factory or a business that you're asked to donate part of your salary to United Way. Well, nationally, United Way in 1 year gave $1.9 million to Planned Parenthood. So it's important that as you look at organizations that you want to support, that you find out who do they support? Where is your money going to? And by the way, when it comes to something like United Way, you can designate and you can ask that a portion or your donation go to another organization, such as an educational fund like ours, or a Crisis Pregnancy Center, or whatever. So anyway, it's important to find out the organizations that you support, who do they support?